Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sunday's edition of All Sports Betting Podcast, football edition. As myself and Kev are going to be discussing the respective picks and analysis and advice in the leagues that we cover. How are you doing, Kev? Not a bad day for you. 2 out of 3 on the pod. Luton Town won, so you must be feeling fairly good.
Yeah, all's good with the world, Steve. Whenever Luton Town win, it's a happy Kev. So can't complain too much at that.
Yeah, I mean, it was apart from my French farce, I think you must say, 3 losers I had in France today. We've done all right, really. Winners across the board, apart from the half lose you had with Accrington. It was a profitable pod. I can only apologise for my French display. Hopefully I can get a bit back on French football on Sunday. But we're going to start in the Premier League, Super Sunday. And a clash between 2 promoted teams, Brighton against Newcastle. And, this is a tricky game, isn't it, Kev? Because, I mean, both teams have actually shown an upturn of form after difficult starts. I mean, do you give an edge to anyone in this one?
Not really, Steve, no. I mean, I think the first thing you need to do is contact the advertising agency, because whoever called this a Super Sunday is clearly should be done for false advertising. It's anything but that. I thought going into the season both these sides would get relegated. I'm not sure if I still think that. I think Newcastle might be safe now that Benitez seems a bit happier with the world. I think my thinking a bit behind Newcastle going down was that he wasn't au fait with everything, and I could have seen him quitting, but he got his way with a couple of transfers later on in the summer, and he'll probably bulk up again in January, won't he? So he might stay. But I'm very much convinced that Brighton won't stay. They don't score enough goals. They didn't score enough goals in the Championship last season. But they got away with that because their defence was so good. The Championship opposition, they don't really break down defences very easily. But in the Premier League, you need to score goals to survive. You just got to look at teams that have gone down recently, sort of Sunderland, certainly Middlesbrough last season, couldn't score a goal if their life depended on it, and ultimately they were never staying up. And I feel that Brighton's the same, but this is a game that if they are going to stay up, they've got to get something from it, and probably got to get 3 points from it. They're not going to host promoted sides too often in this league. Obviously, they're only going to do it twice, and this is a chance for them to get 3 points. But Newcastle, they've won the last 3. They've really taken an upturn in form, like you just said. You could offer some question marks over what they've beaten. A piss poor West Ham side that turned up at St James's Park. Very average Swansea side who are already looking over their shoulders, I would imagine. And a Stoke team who on the day really didn't sort of take their chances. So I find it hard to kind of compare the form of either of these two, really. I don't rate Brighton. And haven't rated them. Don't particularly rate Houghton as a manager at this level either. I think he's too defensive minded. I think you need an attacking intent. As I say, I don't think they've got that. The way they sort of succumbed to Bournemouth last time out wasn't particularly good either, was it? So it's a game to leave alone for me, Steve. I wouldn't be surprised if Newcastle win it. I think back to last season, Brighton seemed to be cruising in the game, then all of a sudden they died on their arse and Newcastle ended up winning 2-1 on their way to the title. Wouldn't be surprised if something like that happened again. Equally, I wouldn't be surprised if both of them appreciate the importance of the game and kind of cancel each other out. So I can't really get a feel for it from a betting point of view. I don't even think it's a game to watch, to be honest. It won't be a particularly good one. Best left alone, really.
Yeah, the goal line is really low for the Premier League. Just a over/under 2 at 1.85. I mean, you'd think this is a French game, wouldn't you? Looking at how it's priced up. I mean, is it going to be that low scoring, do you think?
Well, I think that's just reflected on what I've just said about Brighton going forward. There's not really anything there. I mean, they've got that Grosser, haven't they? Was it Ingolstadt that they signed him from? Somewhere in Germany. And he impressed in the win over West Brom. But, I mean, really and truly, West Brom were atrocious that day. I just can't see where Brighton goals are coming from. Maybe Newcastle have got a little bit more about them going forward. But then Brighton's strength is very much in their defence, isn't it? And I don't think they'll have too much of a problem stuffing out Newcastle. I can see it being 0-0, if I'm being honest. So, yeah, that goal line might actually be justified. But then again, it's one of those games that if someone does score, given that they both see this as a game that they can win, I would imagine they're both going to get pushed out from the team that doesn't score first. And it could kind of go into one of those kind of semi-crazy games that Bournemouth-Brighton game went into the other Friday night.
We shall have to look elsewhere for goals on Sunday then, it looks like here, and for bets as well. We'll move to France a bit later, but I'm going to move to Norway now, where I actually did have a winner on Saturday with an over bet, and I'm going to stick with an over bet in the Christiansen against Starbek game. No, I got this one wrong last week with Christiansen in terms of the overs backing them there, but I still think they're naturally an over team at the moment, especially at home. They're going to fancy their chances beating Starbek, who, well, they're very up and down. They're probably one of the hardest sides to predict in the whole league, actually, Starbek, in fairness. But they did miss 3 key players last week, but they should regain the 3 players for this one. And that's a massive, massive difference maker. Guys like Oyo Moiwanfa, the league top scorer, will obviously improve their offence. And it'll be an end-to-end game. Both teams should fancy their chances. Over 2.75 looks pretty generous. As long as Christiansen don't go into the shell like they did last week against Lillestrøm. But I think this will just kick off a bit. So I'm happy to take the overs in this fixture, Kev.
Yeah, hopefully they come in a little bit safer than that 96th minute winner that we relied on Saturday night as well. But hey, it doesn't matter how they come in as long as they come in, does it? You're absolutely right with that. And that does sound like a good bet to get us going with on Sunday. I believe that's the first of 4 bets that you're going with across the card of 6 matches. You're heading to the game in Molde for your second and third bets, actually, where you like the outsiders.
Yeah, I do, actually. There's been a cup round in midweek, and Molde lost 3-0 to Lillestrøm in that. And I think they're going to be on a bit of a hangover from this one. It was a cup semi-final they were expected to win. They were heavily odds on. So it was very disappointing for them to actually lose that one. But look, I don't rate Molde that much this year. They're a top 6 side, but I don't think they're a top 3 or 4 team. And the league table lies, I think, in respect to where they are right now. They've fluked a lot of late goals this year. They've won matches they didn't deserve to win. And I think Sandefjord are completely underestimated here. Ridiculously underestimated, actually. They've been a very solid team since the summer transfer window. They've reinforced well. They've had a whole week off here. They've got a really good tactical group behind them. Manager Lars Bohinen. They've got English assistant manager Sean Constable as well. I say I really like what they're doing there, and I think they can cover a +1 handicap. Stay within a goal of Molde here for sure. I don't see them getting blown out. They probably might even go 5 at the back here. Difficult to break down, and you know what? I think I've got a sneaky feeling they might even get a win, something like 1-0 or 2-1. So I'm going to have a little nibble on the nose of Sandefjord at 5-1 as well. It just looks a big price to me against a Molde team that could be really reeling after that midweek win, and a Molde side that they're not as good as that league position suggests, like I say, Kev.
Certainly looks like there's a little bit of value in the visitors there. Moving on to your final pick from Norway. Strømsgodset have taken an upturn in form in recent times, and even though they're odds on, that price has not put you off backing them on Sunday. No,
they've been in good form recently. I backed them last week to win away from home for the first time, and they did. They delivered there. They seem in a much better place mentally at the moment, and performances have led to improved results. I think it's a good time to face Tromsø. They're going to be Tromsø's 3rd game in the space of a week. They've had 2 kind of really emotional results at home: a 5-0 win and a 2-2 draw in midweek. That's a good return for them in this fight against relegation. But I've got a feeling their quest for points needs to be after this particular match. They could be really tired. This is not the place you want to go after a whole week of intense matches. Tromsø are not very good away from home. Understandably, they never have been. Long way up north. No one likes to go there, but they don't like to go anywhere either. So, a strong home team like Godset should be able to deliver the goods here. The only real question mark is what line to take. And it's between minus 0.5 and minus 0.75. But look, you can get 1.7 on Strømsgodset just to win. And you can only get 1.9 on the 75 handicap. So you might as well just back them straight on the nose, Kev. There's no real value in going for the bigger handicap in this instance, especially as, they might win by 1 goal. So happy just to go with Strømsgodset on the nose. A bit of a boring bet, this one, I've got to say. The price isn't massive, but should, I think, deliver.
Yeah, I agree with that. Get the full win in the bag rather than potentially losing out on half of a win for the sake of 0.2 points on your price. That's it for Norway for Sunday. We'll come back to the Monday game a bit later in the pod, Steve, but let's move to France. As you say, not the greatest day on Saturday, not helped by PSG deciding to fire blanks all afternoon. But we've got a couple of matches that take your fancy. The first of those is Strasbourg against, well, quite frankly, the most boring side in France, surely, in Nantes. Only 7 goals in their first 6 games for Nantes, and you're not expecting too many more here either.
No, Claudio Ranieri's really made them hard to break down. It's just exactly what Leicester were in the second half of the title-winning season there, where it seemed to be 1-0 every week, didn't it? And it's exactly what he's doing again here. Look, rock-solid defence. If you go through the Nantes team, all their best players are either defenders, the goalkeeper, or solid defensive midfielders. And look, I don't think you can actually call Ranieri a boring manager, can you? Actually, he works with what he's got at his disposal best. And look, if your best players in the squad are defensive players, it makes sense to probably set up in that sort of way. Really, good tacklers and things like that. Strasbourg have struggled since they've come into the league, and I think they would take a point here just to get them back going again, collecting points. Really, it's going to be a tight game. I don't see many goals in it at all, and I'm going to have a little nibble on no goal scorer at 6-1. Kev, it's exactly the same price as the 0-0 correct score. We go on about this all the time. Always back no goal scorer ahead of the 0-0 draw, because if there's an own goal, then you will still win. If it ended 1-0 or 2-0, as it happened in the PSG match last week. And it is the sort of game, if there was a goal, it probably would be a scrappy, sort of shitty own goal from a corner or something. Now, I mean, you could back under 2 here if you wanted to, but I'm not an under 2 backer. It's a really poor price. So what I am going to do is combine a double, an under 2.5 goal double, with the Marseille match later on against Toulouse. I mean, I strongly considered backing under 2.75 outright for this game, but the way I see it, I mean, there's nothing such thing as a banker in football, is there? But Strasbourg Nantes should be a banker under 2.5 winner. So basically, it feels like a 2-1 bet on the Marseille match to end under to me, Kev. Just a bit of value here. I mean, talking about the Marseille game, I just think Toulouse are going to come here and park the bus. They did that last year in big fixtures. PSG, they got a 0-0 draw there last year. And we know what Marseille are like. They get very frustrated very easily. The fans do, the players do. They can struggle to break down teams. The actual worry would be if Marseille got stupid and conceded 3 at the other end, as has been known to happen. But I don't think Toulouse are going to show too much intent going forward. So I just feel like it's going to be a low-scoring match. I don't think it'll be 0-0. I think somewhere along the line there will be a goal. Maybe Marseille might, in the end, nick a 1-0, or even Toulouse might get a win. But yeah, an under 2.5 goal double there. Pays 2-1, or roughly 2-1, most bookies. And also the no goal scorer bet in the Strasbourg match.
Certainly sounds like a decent double to me. Like you say, it really does look like you're just adding to the value of the under 2.5 in the Marseille game there. Certainly wouldn't disagree with that. Let's head across to the MLS. We've had a good night there on Saturday. Before we go into Sunday's games, though, I must admit I'm a little bit worried about what's happening at the minute. I keep on reading about some dude who seems to think that the world's going to end next week. And then watching the MLS on Saturday night, Patrick Mullins, of all people, scored 4 goals in 45 minutes of football. I don't know who's controlling this world, Steve, but I want to get off. It's worrying me.
Well, yeah, what can I say? You know, these things happen sometimes, don't they? It's quite ridiculous, but it's a sort of league where goals seem to happen from anywhere, any time. I mean, look at the Toronto match tonight. It was 0-0 going into about the 85th minute, wasn't it? And it's ended over.
Absolutely, yeah. And of course, Minnesota have scored 4 against Dallas. Really is a strange weekend in the MLS at the moment, that's for sure. But we've got 3 matches to enjoy on Sunday night. 2 of them are on Sky for those of us in the UK. They're the later 2, the Atlanta game and the Portland Timbers game. We'll get to those shortly, Steve, but what are your thoughts on Sporting Kansas City against Los Angeles Galaxy? Galaxy were terrible in midweek, weren't they, against Atlanta? Admittedly, Atlanta are on fire. But is there going to be a hangover of that game?
Well, I mean, I've got to be stopped me from backing Sporting Kansas City here -1. I mean, I've been really thinking about backing them because the Galaxy have been so poor, haven't they? And they played midweek, obviously, with 10 men. But I look at that team and it should still be performing better. I know you actually disagree with me a little bit here, but there is still, I think, quite a bit of quality on paper. In terms of proven MLS performers historically, they've delivered the goods, but they're not delivering at the moment. I don't know really what's going on. It's if as soon as they fall behind in the game, that's it. They give up. You know, the one recent game in Seattle, they were actually up for it, weren't they? They took the lead, and you know they gave it a good shot. But if they fall behind, you do worry. But I also have worries about Sporting Kansas City. They've just won the US Open Cup. You know, obviously celebrating some silverware. You would hope that the players had a really good night out or two on the champagne and everything like that. So what sort of state are they going to be in? You know, that's another big question, isn't it? You know, what sort of state they're going to be in? It could be just on too much of a high, you know, and take their eye off the ball. But sooner or later, Galaxy are going to put them in a performance again, at least, or try harder. I mean, you'd imagine Ziggy Schmidt, the coach, is going to come down hard on a few players. Not literally, I hope, but, you know, he's going to put a rocket up their arses. Who knows here? I really, really want to back Sporting Kansas City, Kev. I really do. So why shouldn't we?
Yeah, I have to say, tempts me to, like you say, the only reason that I'm not going to back them is we don't know how much they've celebrated in midweek. Fair play to them if they have done. You're absolutely right. Whenever you win a trophy, you should celebrate it. I hope for the Los Angeles Galaxy players that Ziggy Schmidt does not come down on any of their players, because he'll squash them in no time. But I think they've sacked the season off from what I saw the other night. I was not impressed with them at all. Even at 0-0, and even when they had 11 men on the pitch, I didn't think they were particularly great. If Sardez is the best they've got up front, well, they're struggling. And I wouldn't be surprised if they don't get another point again this season.
Yeah, it's certainly, if Sporting Kansas City hadn't had the midweek match, it would be a bit of a no-brainer bet, wouldn't it? But we're not going to advise anything, are we?
No, I don't think so. I think it's a game best left alone. They're pretty short as well, aren't they, Kansas? It's not like you're getting any value out of backing them. So there's two juicier games to come where we have got bets. So we'll concentrate on those. Atlanta United against Montreal Impact. I'm very strong on this game. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm very strong on it as well. And there's not a lot to say, is there? Just look at the goal-scoring records of both teams recently, in fact, all season. And it should be an end-to-end contest, full of goals, full of chances. I think Atlanta are rightful favourites. They're a little bit short because Montreal have a habit, don't they, of kind of upsetting big teams on the counter-attack, you know, with quality players like Piatti. I mean, any team that just goes to Toronto and won 5-3, and it should have been by more, deserves some respect, in my opinion. So I would be a bit cautious backing Atlanta, even though they've been brilliant recently. We saw when Orlando fought fire with fire against them last weekend, and they can get dragged down a bit, can't they? LA Galaxy simply weren't up for the fight, and neither were New England Revolution, neither really were Dallas. But Montreal might be. It's just an obvious over, isn't it? I mean, the goal line's 3.25 or 3.5. I mean, I think there's a case for backing either line. I mean, if you want big money on it, you're better off taking the 3.25 line, aren't you? I think it's about 1.75-ish, maybe a little bit more. But there's no real reason to be backing the unders, is there? For sure, you want to be overs all day long.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the thing that strengthens my sort of opinion on it is the fact that Red Bulls lost on Saturday night, so the door's open for the Impact, isn't it? All of a sudden, any motivation questions that you might have had about them, they've just gone out of the window. They'll be severely motivated for a win in this game. Atlanta will too. They're climbing the table nicely. They're in fantastic form, Atlanta. If you've not watched MLS before, do tune into this game on Sunday night. It will be an absolute cracker, and it really will be a great advert for what is very much an increasing league. Atlanta can actually go third in the Eastern Conference with a win. And with games in hand, they could close in on New York City, and you can't rule out them getting a round one bye in the playoffs, can you? The way that they go in, they've got an awful lot of home games still to come too, and we've already seen in the 4 games that they've played in this stadium, not an easy place to go by any stretch of the imagination.
Right now, I think they're the favourites to win MLS in my eyes. Unlike Toronto, I think they're ending the season with momentum, aren't they? Simple as that, really. I don't really see anyone in the East that's going to stop them right now. I think it would come down to the West, really. And if they could actually... what they need to do is get as many points as they can, finish ahead of everyone in the Western Conference points-wise, so they can guarantee themselves a home MLS Cup final if they got that far, really, in my opinion. And the playoffs is not an issue for them. I think they'll finish, even if they finish third or fourth, they should win that by whoever it's against. And but yeah, I mean, in terms of betting this game, over 3.25, we're really strong on that one. I'm also going to advise a little nibble at 5-1 on over 5.5. I mean, it sounds ridiculously extreme, but I think it could easily land. I mean, something like a 4-2 win or even a 3-3 draw can't be ruled out, can it? It's just one of those where the goal line should probably be even higher, as mental as it says. Just this is the match to watch, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I've got to be honest. Even if the goal line was 4, I'd probably be tempted for a nugget or two. Whichever way you look at this, like you said, you just mentioned Piatti and the counter-attacking brilliance of the Montreal side, but there is no better side. Well, there's not many better sides to watch in world football actually than Atlanta United when they get the ball down on the pitch and attack. Once they get that ball into Martinez, well, he knows where the goal is, doesn't he? He's going to be the Golden Boot winner this season, and he's missed half of it. That goes to show just how well he's going right now. I very much endorse the over 3.25 pick, though. I think that's probably the bet of the weekend, actually. Let's move on to the last game. The side that actually got me interested in this league, the Portland Timbers. They're at home to Orlando City. Big game for the Timbers, actually. We don't know at the time of recording this podcast how Vancouver Whitecaps got on in their game on Saturday night. But if they've slipped up, Timbers can go top with a win. Obviously, it's just as big for Orlando, who kind of slid right out of playoff contention. But a win, given that the Red Bulls lost on Saturday, could keep their hopes alive. How do you see this one going?
I'm actually firmly in the Portland Timbers corner here, Kev, and I'm going to back them on a -1 Asian handicap. I see this being something like sort of 2-0, 3-1 sort of result. Timbers are very good at home. We know they themselves are a good offensive team. Diego Valeri scored in 8 consecutive MLS matches. It's a record, and he wants to make it 9. And I wouldn't back against him for sure. Hopefully, Fernando Adi might be back for the Timbers here. He's been out for about 8 weeks, I think. Probably be a bench starter though. Look, Orlando, I just feel that they've kind of played their cup final last weekend, against Atlanta, the hated rival. They raised their game for that, didn't they? But I don't think they're going to really raise it here. There's no reason for them to. I mean, they're out of the playoff reckoning, pretty much. Even if they win all the remaining games, I think that they're not going to get in. Yes, they can take confidence from last week, but are you really going to get yourself up for a trip to the West Coast against a non-conference foe? And I just think Portland will dominate the match ultimately. They do have a good home record. -1 Asian handicap. It should be a safe enough pick. Win by 1 goal at worst. But the Timbers, they don't sit on 1-0 leads, do they? So they're always that chance of a late second goal, even if it is by 1. And that's how I see it going, really. Yeah, sort of maybe they lead by 1 with 10 minutes left. So and we get a second on the break. So -1 handicap. I just don't think Orlando are going to play to the level they did last week. If they do, then fair enough. Obviously, they're a team we've got to watch out for going forward. But I'm willing to take the risk that last week was a one-off for Orlando. The recent results haven't been very good against anyone decent apart from that freak 3-3 draw, really.
Yeah, indeed. Hopefully, Chainsaw Joey's got 90 minutes of juice in that weapon that he carries around with him, and a couple of late goals wouldn't go amiss there. That's for sure. Now then, I said we would mention the Monday night game in Norway a little earlier in the pod, so let's head across to that game. Two sides in the top 6 of the table meet when Sarpsborg host Odd. Are Sarpsborg a little too short for this game?
Yeah, that's the problem, basically, Kev. You're spot on there. If they were a bit bigger, I would back them. The sort of game you want a -1/4 handicap on, really, rather than having to take them, about 1.8 just to win. Sarpsborg, I think they're the second best team in Norway. But they're in the cup final now, and I just wonder their heads might be a bit distracted by that, really. They want to finish second, but that was a really big result for the midweek to get to Oslo. They're facing Lillestrøm in the final, and they'll fancy chances of winning that win that, they're in Europe, whatever. It doesn't matter whereabouts they finish in the league. Odd have improved a little bit recently, but they've played a lot of matches. They were involved in the midweek game at Tromsø. They got 2-2, but you don't want to go up there and you're coming back home, long travelling, and I think I would certainly think Salzburg will win the game, but it'd be tight, maybe 1-0, something like that, 2-1, and yeah, I mean, if you've got a spare tenner, then that's who I'd put my money on, but it's just too short. There's no value there on this particular match. I don't think. We'll end the podcast by talking about the Monday night football in the Premier League. Man United against Arsenal against West Brom is the fixture. Arsenal pretty short here, about a -1.5 handicap. I mean, you would imagine Tony Pulis is going to come here and not attack, probably park the bus a bit. Is that how you see it going?
Yeah, I don't think you need to imagine that, do you? How long's he been a manager for? 15 years? That's pretty much all he's done every other time. So I don't think anything's going to change. The one thing I've got to say about this game is this is the second round of Europa League matches on Thursday night. And this is the second time that an English club in the Europa League has played on the Monday night. Last time round, Everton went to Manchester City on the Monday night before they played on the Thursday in the Europa League. And now Arsenal are playing. I don't get it. I really don't get it. I guarantee there's no other side playing in the Europa League on Thursday night that would be playing their league game beforehand on a Monday night. It's absolutely ridiculous. And if the FA want to know why English clubs don't do very well in Europe, maybe they need to look a little bit closer to home for their fixture scheduling. Will that be an impact on Arsenal? Probably not. They didn't take the first game seriously in the Europa League, did they? Even though they got overrun by 20,000 Germans, they didn't particularly care for that night. And I would imagine they're going to cruise through even with their reserves anyway. But it is something to bear in mind. The value bet is probably Arsenal to win to 0. That'll have landed in 4 of West Brom's last 5 visits to the Emirates. They've only scored 1 goal there in that time, West Brom. Don't see them, like you say, I don't really see them being an attacking side. 1-0, 2-0 Arsenal. Take your pick over which one you fancy, really. Obviously, the longer it goes, maybe that crowd might get a bit on edge. That would put me off. I just don't see it as a betting proposition again, Steve, unless you want to take that Arsenal win to 0. But do you trust this Arsenal backline?
I have a kind of a rule in betting on Tony Pulis teams that if you're given a good handicap on his teams, then you should always side with that handicap over anything if you do have to make a choice, because they do have a habit of staying close, don't they, in every game, really, certainly against the big teams. Funny enough, they tend to struggle more against the crappier outfits. They lost to Brighton, didn't they, 3-0. But I think 2-0 is a big runner here. I do. So I wouldn't be looking to bet in this one either, to be honest. It'll be, I don't think it'll be much of a watch, really. We know exactly how the match is going to go, don't we? I mean, it could be on right now. We know the style, the tactics. Nothing's going to surprise us in this one, Kev. It's just a question of, can Arsenal break them down? Are they going to have a moment of magic, or are they going to be crap in front of goal? And West Brom won't have many chances themselves. But, well, thanks very much for your thoughts, as ever, Kev. Let's hope we can have another profitable day on the Sunday. Thanks all for listening. And we look forward to you joining us next week as well. But from me personally, it's goodbye.
Yeah, cheerio, Steve. Cheerio all.